Hello and welcome to Post-Exertional Mayonnaise. How are you, Dov?
I'm okay. I'm a little crashy, but I'm very happy to be doing the podcast with you. How are you?
Yeah, similar. Been in bed quite a lot this week. So yeah, a bit drained, but no, also excited to be here as well, and to talk a little bit more and to try and build on what we've started. Uh, we just thought we're going to talk about our own stories a little bit today because people might start listening to the podcast and think, who are these people? Why should I listen to them? So we thought it would be nice to just to share a little bit about ourselves and see where the conversation goes. We've got some little segments as well that we'll sort of insert in, and then we'll go from there. Um, to start off, we thought it'd be really nice to thank Lou Baker, who's done our excellent um, artwork for the podcast, and I'm sure lots of people will have seen it online, and we're really impressed, aren't we, Dov?
Hmm?
We're really impressed with the artwork,
Yes. Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you, Lou. And you
and
saved everyone from my really bad mayonnaise art. I'm a bad mayonnaise artist.
I need to share that actually. I haven't shared it online, so we'll share some of Dov's mayonnaise art for those who want to see it. So yeah, Lou Baker is an amazing illustrator. She's got Emmy,
Yes.
and you can find her work at loubakerart.com. So that's LUBAKERART.com. So do go and look her up if you and
Yeah, and
just
I
do
love looking at sorry.
no, go
You-
on.
Oh, I was just gonna say I love looking at her art on Instagram. She actually has two Instagram accounts. I found one. I seem to have somehow not figured out how to find the other one, but I love looking at her artwork on Instagram. I don't know her account name off the top of my head, but I will link it. I will put it in the when we post this podcast. When I put it on Instagram, I'll link to her,
In the show notes.
at least one of her accounts.
Brilliant. Um, yeah, so we just want to thank people for watching our introduction episode as well. We were just like really pleased to get loads of positive feedback, and people are really keen to listen, and that's brilliant, isn't it? And also I kind of got really enthusiastic and invited lots of people as guests, not expecting quite so many people to come back and say yes, I'd love to come on. So we've got a number of people that are really keen to come on the podcast and talk about their experiences and their art and their work, and it'll just be brilliant to sort of delve into people's stories and delve into people's meaning making, really, and we're really looking forward to it. But just for if you did agree to come on as a guest, just bear with us, because we're going to be sort of working through that list and then arranging sort of times to meet with people and stuff online. So should we start with the Cog Fog Corner? I don't know if
Sure.
that's what we're going to call it, um, but we a friend of mine, Paul, who's got Emmy, he posted online that he'd accidentally used air freshener as deodorant, and it made us think a little bit about all the times that we've just done daft things or said daft things, and it adds a bit of humor. Um, and I actually said to my wife this morning, can you pass the DJ? And I just wanted to pass me a mug, and because I was going to make a cup of tea. And why I said DJ, I've got no idea. It's just this is what ME brains do sometimes, the cognitive dysfunction. Um, I'm just going to read some of these out. Lisa said, I forgot the word drink while doing bar work. I think I managed, hey, would you like food but liquid? So, um, Kirsty says, we have these weird shower buttons in our room. Previous owners installed them. So it sounds like she can control her shower from inside her room, which is bizarre, but there you go. Have now gotten used to turning on the shower with these buttons. We also have a button light switch. Pressed the light switch a few days ago and wondered um, why the shower didn't go on. So yeah, random. Anna said I used ibuprofen. No, I almost used ibuprofen gel. Ibuprofen. I can't even talk today. Ibuprofen gel instead of toothpaste. Liv
Oh,
said,
no.
Liv said, I've put my phone and my iPad in the microwave and freezer multiple times. Luckily catching myself just before starting the microwave. So microwave your phone. Oh, Marilyn, I love this one. I've been zapped by an electric fence and thought that the zap was a new symptom. That's gotta hurt.
Relatable.
Christina, who's brilliant, she said, I sometimes talk in the wrong language as I can speak three. I sometimes write in the wrong language, luckily only privately. Um, and then I'll finish this on this one, and then I've got a more serious one as well. Joe said, fetched cereals through to the bedroom when I was really ill. Realized I'd brought a fork instead of a spoon. No energy to go back into the kitchen. Ate the cereal with a fork. Thankful I'd chosen flakes and not Rice Krispies. And then one more, and we'll come back. If you want to send us any more, it'd be brilliant. Somebody said, I don't know this person's name because there are just lots of dashes and some dots. Not funny exactly, but I did forget how to drive while driving, which is slowed down to let a car through a narrowing in the road and thought something was wrong with the car. Called husband and explained the situation. He asked me to try a couple of things, turn the car on and off, what gear I was in, etc. And then asked what happened when I put my foot on the accelerator. It was only then that I realized I was trying to drive without using the gas pedal. He suggested I stay pulled over and call an Uber. I did. But I think that just really highlights the challenges, doesn't it? With actually, we might feel like we're doing all right, we're kind of going along fine, driving along, and then all of a sudden, kind of something happens, and our brains just literally stop working. So, I thought
Yeah.
those were
I
brilliant.
mean,
I
I
thought,
stopped driving. I think after my second year with ME, I just had to stop
mm,
driving because I felt so unsafe. Being in a car, given how hard it was cognitively.
mm,
Um,
yeah, it's one of the things that drains me most. I do drive, but not much at all. Just kind of when I have to, really. Yeah, and not very often. Um, so yeah. Um, do you want to talk a little bit about your story, Dov, in terms of kind of like um who you are, what you were doing before you became ill, and kind of
yeah,
that progression
Dan
into
and I were emailing a little this morning, and and I was kind of thinking of what does it mean to tell a short version of my ME story, and where does
mm,
my ME story begin? And I think there's so many ways. I think so many of us, and I'd be really interested to hear anything people have to say. I'm on Instagram, Dan's on Twitter, and you can email us, so you can like get in touch with him or get in touch with me or email our pen pod site. Um, but wait, what was I talking about?
your story.
Oh yeah, the question of sort of when does your Emmy story start? Because for me, I got Emmy when I was on the Gregorian New Year, which is what I call. I'm Jewish, so a lot of people call it the secular New Year because the Jewish New Year is not the Gregorian New Year, which is kind of the Christian New Year. In any case,
Okay.
but it's the Gregorian New Year. It was 2000, it was Gregorian New Year Eve 2013 turning to 2014, and I was out with friends. I remember it so precisely because I was out with a bunch of friends. There's this thing in the town where I live in Massachusetts called First Night. I think they also do it in Boston and maybe other places, but in any case, it's a lot of performances, mostly musical, and you can go from performance to performance. And I had a little cold, but I felt fine to be out in the, I was. This was pre-COVID. I was out without a mask on with a cold, which I suppose is not necessarily the something that I now feel like is the best thing to be doing. But and at 9 at night, almost on the dot, I came down with a fever and like an intense fever. And I remember just having a really hard time getting home. I was kind of staggered trying to catch a cab. I was so sick, and then I had a flu for about 7 to 10 days, and then I tried to go back to my life, and I had severe brain fog, but I didn't know what it was called. Like profound. I was at the time I was a student teacher. I was getting my master's degree. I was I guess to give you sort of a broad I was born in 1971. I grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I went to college at Princeton, but really struggled there. And uh, at that point, I came out as queer when I was at Princeton. I didn't yet know the word trans. I started identifying as transgender when as soon as I learned the word. I was already using he, him pronouns some of the time, even before I knew the word trans. And then I moved to San Francisco when I was 24 and lived there until I was 35. um, Worked various jobs, and then moved to New York. And then I moved here to Massachusetts to do a Master of Fine Arts program in fiction. And I moved here in 2009 to Massachusetts. And then after I got my Master of Fine Arts in fiction, I realized that it was going to be really hard getting a job. So then I started a master's in teaching at Smith College. And it was during that master's program, it was a 1 year, really intensive master's program, that I got the flu. And then I was student teaching. And literally, after I got the flu, the teacher would tell me to turn on the light, and I would have to stand there, or like turn off the light, turn on the light, like really simple tasks. And I would just stand there trying to process it. And it would take me like 15 seconds to process what turn on the light meant. And so I was really, I had really bad brain frog, I had really bad brain frog. And I also, like, even though I'd had chronic illness stuff for my entire adult life, and this is one of the reasons it's really hard to talk about, like, when does my ME story begin, because I had mast cell activation syndrome, though I didn't know what it was called, for a long time. And I had a lot of chronic illness stuff, but I also was very able to be very physically active, and I did yoga every single morning. And after I got the flu, I couldn't do the yoga in the morning, but I would like get angry at myself and just call myself lazy. Like I would feel like I was being lazy. And then I would try to go swimming, which was my favorite thing in the world before I got ME. And I was used to, like, no matter how bad I felt, if I went into the water, I would feel better. And then when after the flu, after I went in the water, I literally thought I was going to die. And so, like, my entire body just like hurt. And then and my muscles felt so heavy, and I just felt horrible. And I'd been sick, like I'd had chronic illness stuff for a decade or two, and this was unlike any of my previous experiences. And so I didn't believe myself, and I didn't understand, and I kept pushing. And then in early April, so I got the flu New Year's Eve, so January, February, March, so about 3 months after I got the flu, I went into like really intense convulsions at work and had to get taken to the hospital, where they basically told me I was crazy. And then I had to deal with gaslighting, all the things that we have to deal with. But it was at that point in early April that I became mostly homebound. I still tried to do some stuff. It didn't go well, but I still pushed and pushed because I didn't understand ME. And even once I got a diagnosis, I didn't understand. The doctor didn't give me any kind of, he just said I had ME and sent me on my way and said, sorry, pal. Like
Bye. Good luck.
and so I was like more focused on some infections that I had tested positive for rather than the ME. So then in August of that year, a local person who also has ME/CFS came to my house. She was a friend of a friend, and explained to me why I couldn't walk, why I couldn't do things, why after exertion I thought I was going to die. Like, she basically mentored me. And until then, I didn't understand, and I kept pushing, and I thought I was crazy. And yeah, it's just like, so I guess that's the very, very short version of my Emmy
Mm.
story. And then she gave me information about some doctors I could go to get a sort of more significant uh, basically to get diagnosed by somebody in a way that would help me get benefits for disability. And also, I went to, I don't, a lot of you might have heard of this Dr. Systrom. If you live in the US, especially, and in the East Coast, he does these tests for what's called preload heart failure, which is also called low blood volume and low filling pressure, which is very common for people with ME. It's an autonomic nervous system thing that basically your filling pressure drops in a way where you're not getting oxygen to your brain. And
Right.
so when I went to him, I finally understood why I had a really hard time being on my feet and walking. And that really helped me, because until then, even after the understanding the ME diagnosis, I was still kind of feeling like I was making up the fact that I couldn't walk, more than just like puttering around. So I can
Mm.
putter around. I'm very lucky. I can putter around. I can do a little activity, but I'm mostly homebound and mostly in bed. Um,
Mm.
yeah.
One thing that you said was really made me think was about how you had that friend that came and sort of talked to you about ME, and it seems like so many of us kind of find out about ME or learn about our own illness through kind of non-conventional means, through, you know, the support's not always there through the health services, and that kind of we're often kind of like um finding out about illness, the specifics and how to manage illness through kind of peer support rather than often the sort of medical profession, which hopefully that'll things will change going forward. So, you know, that's been kind of like a hope
I,
for quite a long time now, hasn't it, that things
yeah,
will change.
I really believe that there should be a lot of coaching available, not like how to get better, but just
Mm,
um, how to minimize harm to your body as a person with ME, and kind of the problems you might face, like the sensory problems, the problems with medication, the problems with food. Like I really feel like there should be coaches of like available to really help us, because yeah, I really think that a lot of people with ME have to learn how to take care of themselves while devastatingly sick, through their own efforts at connecting with the illness, which I'm not like, I think that's wonderful. And
mm,
maybe in the end, we're going to have to create our own sort of mentorship programs so that,
mm,
but I think the problem is that people don't always know how to find each other. And, everybody's ME experience is unique and a little different. So a lot of people are going to have different, like my symptoms are not exactly like your symptoms.
mm,
So, to be able to find somebody who can sort of help you understand the possible range of symptoms and how to do self-care and how to try to sort of avoid post-exertional mayonnaise as much as is possible. And
mm,
yeah, I really wish that there were highly accessible ways to get that kind of support.
yeah, yeah. I was reading recently that apparently in Iceland they're looking at setting up it, because it's such a small population, they're looking at setting up like a hub sort of type facility for people with ME to come and get that sort of support and that sort of you know, advice and support in terms of pacing and things. So yeah, that it would be great to sort of have more of that. Um, in terms of kind of like what you spend your time doing now, and talking about creativity, you've written a number of books since you became ill. How was that in terms of trying to manage the kind of the writing and planning and everything that goes into sort of producing a book while kind of having ME with that sort of cognitive dysfunction?
I mean, both of the books that I published were drafted before I got ME.
Okay.
But I edited them both with ME, which was it was pretty early on in ME. I think they were both published maybe in 2016. Hold on, I'm gonna get a little drink of water. It was really hard and it was a lot of work, but it was really rewarding. And at the time I was quite isolated and I didn't have I had a lot of help, a lot of support from friends and from um I actually was able to pay an editor, which was an amazing thing that I wish I still was able to do. It's like I had um yeah and yeah it's hard because I don't remember it that well, but I just remember really enjoying. So earlier on in my illness I was able to do a lot more writing and a lot more watching of like TV and films, and
Mm,
I moved 3 years ago, and since then I've been having a really hard time. I haven't yet recovered from the move, and I'm
mm,
still very much struggling to write, and can't seem to watch hardly any um TV or movies because it's just like too much sensory input and too much like emotional stress, and my adrenaline just kind of goes a little bonkers. But yeah, so but earlier on with ME, I was able to do quite a bit of writing, and it was because I was so isolated, it was such a comforting thing and really um really meaningful. And I really enjoyed the process of editing and publishing those books, but I wouldn't have been able to do it with a lot of help and support of various kinds. And the other part of this is that because I couldn't do any kind of book tour, I
mm,
did one reading and Dan was there, and that was online. And, so I wasn't able to in any way really market the books. So that, you know, I got on like two shortlisted for I think two or three awards, and I got on a list of like um book group books to read. I think through I'm trying to remember. I think through the Jewish Book Council.
mm,
And so, in some ways it was really satisfying to get a little bit of recognition for the work that I did, but I wasn't able to promote the books in a way, that basically, they were forgotten very quickly because I wasn't able to get any momentum, even with the sort of award stuff.
mm,
And the being on the Jewish, I think it was the Jewish Book Council list. Yeah, so writing a book is just part of being an author, and if you want anybody to read your
mm,
book, you have to be a person in the world, and with ME it is very hard to be a person in the world. And then also, like, I think I'm deeply introverted, which in some ways have saved my ass with ME. Like, I think people I know who are extroverted and have illnesses that isolate them, I think it's much this is just me theorizing about things that I don't know, so please don't don't take this and run with it as a fact. But I think that from people I've talked to who are more extroverted, and the kind of isolation that comes with chronic illness and ME is much seems to be much harder. Like for me, hiding is my nature. And so I think between just being an introvert and being terrified of like too much attention on social media and in general, and
mm,
then not being able to do any kind of book readings, in some ways, like I wrote the books into a vacuum, but I did really enjoy the process. And it's nice to have accomplished something. Like, there are times that I wonder if I'm ever going to be able to finish another book. And there are
mm,
so many projects that I'm working on and want to finish. And And I'm really like, I go kind of back and forth between being really hopeful that like something will shift and I'll be able to do more work, and then just feeling this kind of hopelessness and despair. And uh yeah, I forget where this was going, but
Yeah, the
did I answer your
process.
question?
Yeah, no. It's what's really interesting is that I read one of your books kind of not too long after we started sort of chatting online, because I was like, I want to kind of yeah, read one of your books, and was it the right thing to do at the time? Is that what it's
Yeah.
called? And it's a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, isn't it?
Hmm.
And from a sort of trans Jewish perspective, is that right?
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it, but I couldn't read it now, not because I didn't want to read it, but
Yeah.
my ability to read books and particularly fiction has kind of gone out the window, and because I just struggle to kind of process and retain the names of the characters, who's who, where the storyline's going, and even audiobooks that are fiction I struggle with, because I'll fall asleep and then I'll sort of forget where I was at, and then having to try and figure out, and it's just it's frustrating. And so yeah, I tend to dip into maybe like non-fiction audiobooks now, purely because they might be talking about something interesting, and then I can kind of like pick it up again later, and I don't have to kind of like carry the narrative really. But yeah, I really enjoyed your book when I read it at the time, and I know on the last podcast I said that we weren't comedians, but I think you are at heart, because I think there was some really funny stuff in there, and I appreciated learning an awful lot about not only the trans community, but kind of a lot of the Jewish heritage, and how those things, of the intersection of those things, and I thought it was brilliant. So yeah, if people do want to read, I think we'll probably need to put links down to your books as well. So
I have a
yeah.
bunch of I think I have boxes of those books because the person who I kind of co-published them with somebody who was a co-publisher and distributor, and she basically, so there were these changes to um the means of distribution of books changed in a way that especially affected small presses negatively. And I could talk more about that, but I, this has already been, I think, longer than we meant it to be,
Yeah.
and we still have Dan's story to get to. So, but I will say that, yeah. So she basically stopped running her small press because it became nearly impossible to distribute books in a
Mm.
just because of sort of economic forces, and one of the biggest distributors. Well, I'll leave it there, but I will say that I have boxes of books. So if people do want, you can always just read it on Kindle. I'm happy to send you PDFs, or I could potentially, send out some hard copies if people want them. You can just let me know. You may be able to get them on Amazon. I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm happy to just send them out to you if
I
I can find someone to help me get to the post office and stuff.
I got a copy on Amazon, and it was I think it was like printed over here potentially in the UK. I think sometimes they like do on-demand printing sort of thing. And I think that's how I got a copy through Amazon. But yes, well, thanks for sharing your story. That was really great, and I think there's a lot of similarities for a lot of us, isn't there, in terms of how we kind of like became ill, in terms of like the process of learning and understanding our bodies. And I think that's gonna ring true for an awful lot of people, in terms of discovering and then trying. And we haven't even kind of like touched on living with the condition, really, have we? It's there's so much to talk about. So I think what we thought was, just because of time,
Yes.
we'll talk about my story next time, hopefully, and then go from there. But we have got an advert, but please don't skip forward, because this is an important advert. Um, on podcasts you get all these adverts, don't you? And people say, "Oh, we're going to do our advert now." So this is a company called Exhaustion Enterprises, and I'd be interested, Dov, to see what you think of this product, because it could be revolutionary. Really, really could. It's not a real product, okay? So these are the airbaggy trousers. Is your chronic illness wearing you down to the ground? We have something for you to wear. Prone to your legs getting wobbly or your muscles giving way? Try our exclusive luxury lined bruise, break, and bump prevention trousers. Working closely with Luxembourg car manufacturer Hyundai's, we've used motoring industry standard airbag technology to create stylish and almost discreet wearable pants. When alerted to a fall using built-in sensors tested at crash speeds of up to 200 miles an hour, these prevention pants will inflate before you hit the ground. Now with app-controlled air conditioning and heating. Just connect to your Wi-Fi and your Exhaustion Enterprises airbaggy trousers can regulate your precious pins. The airbaggy trousers are designed not just with functionality in mind, but with your unique style. We worked with legendary art and fashion icon Stella McPlant to bring you retro 90s flares, flowing hippie generation harem pants, and noughties jeggings. Find your style, find your freedom with the airbaggy trousers from Exhaustion Enterprises. Not to be worn outdoors, not suitable for households with pets. Take 16 AA rechargeable batteries, excellent 3-month warranty. Try our financing scheme, only 36 monthly payments of $69.99. Terms and conditions apply. Exhaustion Enterprises, we've got you sorted. So we might be hearing more from Exhaustion Enterprises going forwards, but no, I thought really it was just an example of sometimes things are sort of advertised and tried to be sold to people within the chronic illness community that are just a bit bonkers or don't make sense, or actually they're just really expensive. So,
We should say that they come with vinegar. I just want to say, like, when Dan sent me this, I was imagining that, like, when the trousers, like, I was imagining sort of helium trousers picking you off the ground, and that, like, people would turn upside down. So I was
oh,
imagining,
hitting
like,
the ceiling and stuff.
yeah, like, kind of like, yeah, I was having fun imagining the airbaggy trousers
So yes,
in
that's
action.
so I'm sure if you want a pair, you probably won't be able to buy them because they just were created in my brain. But there you go. So we were going to have also a poetry section, and I didn't know if you wanted to read this poem by Natalie
I
Gravel.
do. But first, I just want to imagine a room full of people with ME wearing baggy trousers.
Uh, and they would just look ridiculous, wouldn't they? They would just be like padded out and
Oh, but what if we're all like floating around?
because
You know?
they do actually make them, because I was watching some motorbike racing recently and I did discover that actually they do have airbag trousers in superbikes and stuff, so that when the racer kind of
Oh,
comes off,
so
they do actually inflate, but obviously it's probably not functional and practical within a living environment, I
yeah,
don't suppose.
no. I don't know why my brain imagines helium is involved, because I know that there's not actually helium in airbags, but I just imagine, like, almost like in a astronaut situation, like, just people sort of being lifted up into the air as if there is zero gravity.
I like the idea. Almost a bit like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, the old one where they kind of floating up into the
Oh, I
do you remember
barely
that?
remember that. I haven't seen
Yeah,
that since I was a kid,
yeah.
because
It's
it scared me.
yeah. It's yeah, there's a great bit where Uncle Joe, isn't it? And Charlie kind of go floating up in the into the bubbles.
Wasn't it
And then
scary though when they did
yeah,
that?
because
Was
they nearly get trapped at the top of the building, don't they? They nearly
oh,
there's a fan that's going round and round, and they kind of nearly got
oh.
kind of too much drama, too much drama. Um, so there we
Airbaggy
go.
choppers.
Airbaggy trousers. More products from Exhaustion Enterprises to come in the future.
Yes,
All being well.
please. Thank you. Um, for that. What you did, you really went all out with that. Like, you went into really minute details in a really great way.
Yeah, I got a bit carried away, I think.
I love it. I loved it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, so I'm gonna read a poem by and Dan, will you tell me, do you know the if I'm pronouncing this right? Natalie Robin Justice Gravel?
Yeah, Natalie Robin Justin, the Justice is a kind of I think Natalie's frustration, and her husband supported her as well. She's got really severe ME, and it's great to see when she's online because we know she's doing a little bit better. And yeah, she posted this on Twitter recently, so yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna read Natalie's poem to the best of my ability, and yeah, thank you, Natalie, for this. I'm not sure if there's a title to this, so I'm just gonna call it The Day After,
Mm,
because that's the first line as far as I can tell. The day after a good day, the hardest of days, the light goes out, silence returns, you're swallowed back into the darkness, doors shut on every possibility, imprisoned, shackled to your bed, waiting, waiting, waiting for the day after the suffering ends and life begins again.
mm, mm. And I think that really just highlights the experience, doesn't it, of post-exertional malaise. Um, anything that we do kind of like can hit us hard. And then it goes kind of from that active state to that still state, where we're sort of like in bed, and it's really unpleasant. Um,
Mm.
but I've got one more quote to finish with,
Yeah.
and it's you'll have to see if you can you know where this has come from. Um, Now stillness is my ocean, and I've learned to swim in it. I thought it was brilliant.
Who's that?
That's you.
That's me. I don't remember. Was it in an email?
It was no, it was in an online essay that you wrote about walking, and that I was reading
Oh,
again.
that essay I wrote.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Oh,
very
that
good.
I feel very strongly about that. Oh, a whole nother conversation we'll have,
Definitely.
because there's this whole sort of lore on writers and walking. You'll see so many things written about writers walking in cities, writers like Jane Austen walking, uh, Virginia Woolf walking, Rimbaud, probably however you say his name, walk, is that Rimbaud walking?
You
Who
know?
was the original flaneur? Was that, it's in French, it's like flaneur. Anyways, Dickens walking, like there's so much stuff about writers walking. And then more recently you have Rebecca, oh, what's her name? Rebecca, um she wrote Men Explain Things to Me.
Don't know that one.
There, and then there's a lot of contemporary writers who write about like how walking is integral to their writing process. And I kind of was just like, what if you can't walk, or
Mm,
what if you're not safe? I was thinking of it from an ME perspective, but also from a perspective of like some people aren't, it's not safe for them to walk, or some people
mm.
walking means, I don't know. I just had this anyways. So yes, I wrote an essay but I didn't remember that line. Thank
It was
you.
very good, and I was
Uh,
just looking at it again today, and it's like now stillness is my ocean, and I've learned to swim in it. So we're all kind of learning to swim in that ocean of stillness to try and get back to a place of where we can make meaning again and feel like ourselves. So yeah, I think that's probably it for this week. I think we'll come back another time and talk about me.
yes.
And then we will be then having a mixture of guests, and then us just talking randomly about different themes around this idea, or the concept of post-exertional mayonnaise, and how it impacts us, because it is the most significant kind of part, I think, for many of us of living with ME, and it's this sort of signature um, thing that we have to deal with, really. So thanks again for listening, and we'll speak to you next time.